What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro.
What's going on, everybody? Kevin Valentin here, other half of the podcast. Kyle, happy Monday, my man.
Yes, sir. Had a nice long day at work, but got some food in me, got a nice shower. I'm just ready to rock and roll. How about you?
Same, man. Got back from a little trip this past weekend, fully refreshed, did some laundry, cleaned up the crib a little bit, had my first day back in the office. And by in the office, I mean right back in the office here in the crib. So just getting myself back acclimated and whatnot, but super happy to be back.
Yes, sir. I'm a little bit envious of you having that work from home life. I wouldn't definitely be opposed to that. But what I do pays the bills, and honestly, that's all I care about at this point. But outside of that, we got a lot to get to today. We got a couple topics, mostly going to be NBA related. Um, Guys, if you guys have been paying attention to these conference finals series, they have just been utter runaways, with the Miami Heat being up 3-0 in their series. As of right now, the Denver Nuggets are up 3-0 in their series. So we're recording as the Game 4 matchup between the Lakers and the Nuggets is ongoing. That's something that we'll cover at the end of the episode, but kind of similar to what I was bringing up with Miami and Boston. Just Denver has taken full advantage of that series against the Lakers, and they do have a potential to wrap this series up in 4 games in a 4-game sweep. That's something that we'll get to at the end, like I mentioned. Some other topics we'll get to is Carmelo Anthony has retired from the NBA after 19 seasons. One of the most beloved players in the NBA over the last 20 years. As of right now, LeBron is the only player left from that 2003 NBA draft. LeBron's 38 years old. Carmelo put his time in. It's just unfortunate that he wasn't able to get that elusive championship next to his name. Had some opportunities, just fell short. Just a great career nonetheless, but man, I wish he was able to get that one championship next to his name. Outside of that, we will talk about the Ja Morant situation. Obviously, if you guys were paying attention to the Ja Morant news last week, he was caught on Instagram Live once again flexing a gun. This was the second time that we've seen an incident where Ja Morant has flashed a gun on Instagram Live over the last 2 months. Yet, Kevin and I have already spoken our piece about that Ja Morant situation when it comes to what we think the suspension should be in regards to what he's been doing over the last couple months. This mostly has to do with the fact that the NBA is dragging their feet on the situation. It's been over a week since this news broke, and there really hasn't been any sort of development as far as a timetable of how long the situation is going to be in regards to the suspension. So we may hear about it later this week. It could come after the NBA Finals, but honestly, this is something that has taken a little bit too long, in my opinion, and that's something that we'll get to. And then after that, we'll talk about James Harden and potentially getting a $200 million contract this offseason. Supposedly, he wants to team up with a playoff contender. There's been a lot of rumors circulating that he could be open to a return to Houston, where he spent a good chunk of his career after spending some time in OKC. So I know Kev's got plenty to talk about that, knowing that Kev is definitely one of the biggest James Harden fans I've ever come across. So he will definitely have some things to say about that. And like I said, we'll cover the Lakers and Nuggets series. More than likely, by the time that we reach that point in the episode, we'll have a clearer view on whether or not this series is going to be wrapped up in 4 or if this goes back to Denver for Game 5. So, Kev, first things first, we got to talk about Miami Heat just utterly dominating the Boston Celtics in this Eastern Conference Finals matchup. Game 4 is going to take place on Tuesday night, and there's a really good chance that this series could end up in a 4-game sweep with Miami advancing to the finals. Boston has just been utterly manhandled this entire series. And in Game 3, they just got ran off the court in Miami. Miami was just knocking down 3 points left and right. And it got to the point where Boston was resting their starters pretty much the entire fourth quarter just because of how bad Miami was beating them down. So, as it is right now, granted, Boston still could technically come back, but it is highly unlikely. We've never seen a 3-0 deficit comeback in any sort of playoff capacity in the NBA. I highly doubt that's going to happen here. So, Kev, I'm just going to kick this one to you. Kev, with Game 4 taking place Tuesday night, Do the Miami Heat close a series out and get a 4-game sweep against the Boston Celtics to advance to the NBA Finals?
To be completely honest, I believe this ends in a sweep for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, the Miami Heat want it more. Game 3 showed it. This is why I always say that hard work, dedication, and grit are going to just beat out talent. On paper, the Boston Celtics are so much better than the Miami Heat. You have Tatum, you have Brown, Smart, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, so many amazing, incredible players on this team, right? And a pretty solid bench, and a head coach who took over for Ime Udoka at 34 years of age. And nobody really said anything when Boston was kind of popping off in the regular season. Nobody was calling for his job. Nobody was saying that, like he was incompetent, he was inexperienced, that he didn't know what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, Boston starts to lose. And suddenly he's lost the locker room. Suddenly he has no concept with adjustments. He doesn't know how to coach a team. This roster was totally fine last year. Ime Udoka got the best of them. But everybody was saying during the regular season in the first 2 rounds, oh, who needs Ime? This roster is loaded enough. Nobody was saying anything when Jason Tatum dropped 51 points in Game 7 of the semifinals. Nobody was saying anything when Malcolm Brogdon won Defensive Player of the Year. Nobody was saying anything when Jaylen Brown was slowly becoming...
6th man of the year. 6th man of the year.
6th man of the year. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Nobody was saying anything when Jaylen Brown was emerging as the potential fourth quarter scorer of the Boston Celtics throughout the postseason and the end of the regular season. Now, typical Boston sports, they got to have a scapegoat, right? All these major sports teams, just like Doc Rivers in Philadelphia, just like Monty Williams in Phoenix, everybody has to have a scapegoat. And it just so happens that happens to be the head coach of the Boston Celtics. We're focusing on the wrong things here. Let's not focus on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown turning the ball over. Let's not focus on the fact that their shot selection was atrocious. Let's not focus on the fact that they're unable to keep the ball away from Miami in terms of turnovers. Let's not focus on the fact that your players aren't getting back on defense. Let's not focus on the fact that you're playing terrible transition, offense and defense. But it's Joe Mazzulla's fault. Mazzulla, right? Joe Mazzulla? Am I getting that correct? I'm probably butchering that.
I mean, you keep going. I'll look it up real quick. Yeah, it's Mazzulla.
Yeah. So I find it comical, again, in the NBA particularly, that it's always the head coach's fault when players aren't performing. He said in the media, I believe yesterday after the game, I didn't get the most out of them. I didn't prepare them. Again, doing what a head coach is supposed to do. Taking the blame, acknowledging that it's his fault. The buck starts with him. Everything that a head coach is supposed to say. But now people are calling for his job. Now the New England media is calling for him to be dismissed. Now people are asking for a new head coach. Kind of funny, right? Because you're number 2 in the Eastern Conference all year round. Jason Tatum is all NBA first team. Marcus Smart wins Hustle Player of the Year. Malcolm Brogdon wins 6th Man of the Year. Nobody said anything all season. Maybe Boston just underestimated Miami. Maybe Boston thought that they can get over it. I mean, Jaylen Brown said a bunch of guys are beating us that shouldn't, and kudos to them, or guys that we should be able to contain. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote. But the point of the matter is you're getting run off the floor by 7 undrafted free agents. The point of the matter is you're getting run off the floor by 33-year-old Jimmy Butler. The point of the matter is they don't have Tyler Hero. They don't have Victor Oladipo. Udonis Haslem is basically the ultimate cheerleader, and he's getting chance to come into a game that you guys are getting blown out by 20-plus points, 30-plus points. What is your excuse? Because when you take the coaching aside, I don't want to hear it. You don't want it. You have no effort. You have no drive. Jimmy Butler's in your head. And you're just getting outperformed by players like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, who was benched for the last season and a half because he couldn't defend or get anything going offensively. Caleb Barton, who J. Cole had to save his career when getting cut by Charlotte. What are we talking about here? You have so many notable named actual NBA players, former All-Stars, pros, all-pros, and you're still losing. I don't want to hear it. Boston always has excuses. All Boston sports always have excuses. Oh, the Patriots. Well, it's got to be Mac Jones and not Matt Patricia. Oh, in New England, it's got to be in Boston, it's got to be Joe Mazzulla. For the Red Sox, it's got to be Alex Cora. It's got to be so and so. It's got to be this. The Bruins, number 1 ranked all time NHL offensive team, number 1 ranked team all time in NHL total record, right? They lose in the first round to the Panthers, which, by the way, the Panthers are about to go to the Stanley Cup. They're 2 games away from that. So just let that marinate, right? Typical Boston fans, always complaining and never blaming the players. Miami wants it more. They're hustling. They're playing with more grit, more passion. They're scoring at an efficient clip. They're shooting at a better clip. They're attacking the paint. And they're playing aggressive on defense. Those are playoff basketball tendencies. Those are playoff basketball traits. So I expect Miami to close this out because Boston needed game 3. And if not to get game 3, to at least make it competitive. They got mollywopped. Absolutely embarrassed. There's no room for error of that magnitude at this stage in the postseason. This isn't the first round. This isn't the play-in tournament. This isn't game 1 of the semifinals. This is game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. You're already down 2-0 on your enemy's home floor. You got run off the table. Basically, halfway through the third quarter, you had given up. You waved the white flag as the second half started. And now you go into game 4 down 3-0, and no team has ever come back from it. So I expect Miami to go out here, and I expect the momentum to continue, the shooting performance to continue, and Jimmy Butler to continue to troll the entire Celtics organization. So Tobias Harris over Jimmy. Tobias Harris over Jimmy. That quote's got to be singing in Philly's head, man, because this man, Jimmy Butler, is about to will the Miami Heat with these random no-name players into an NBA Finals berth.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. I think just going into game 4, Miami has all the momentum. And I think at this point, you kind of had to be a fool to pick the Celtics just based on how they've looked in this series so far. Like Kev said, Boston has been thoroughly outplayed and just out-hustled. Miami is not playing like an 8 seed. They are playing with the playoff intensity that you would typically see from a top 4 seed in any sort of conference, whether it be the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference. And Kev, I just don't see how Boston could be able to gain any sort of momentum back knowing how game 3 played out with, like you said, Boston getting just completely destroyed in game 3 where they needed that game to get back into the series. It's just with me, Boston has had no answer for Miami's role players. And it's like what Kev said. It's guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson. All of these guys have been on fire behind the 3-point line where, Kev, there have been some games where Miami is shooting upwards of 50%, even higher than that behind the 3-point line. And it's not just one game where they hit that. They are hitting that multiple times. In this series and in some of the past series, they've been able to replicate that success. And to me, this is one of those situations where Erik Spoelstra, the head coach of the Miami Heat, he has completely outclassed Joe Mazzulla. It's not even close. And it's simple. Boston does not have an answer when Miami drives into the paint and they kick it out to either Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, where they're basically just sitting behind the 3-point line, getting ready to spot up and shoot a 3. And most of the time, I'd say probably 5 to 6 times out of 10, they're knocking down those 3-pointers consistently. How you going to stop that? You have to make some sort of adjustment against that. Joe Mazzulla has not done that, and Boston is finding themselves in a hole that they're probably not going to dig themselves out of. And, when I look at Jason Tatum, I think Tatum's been pretty solid this series. It's not like he's going out there and only scoring 15, 20 points a game. He's put up 30 points multiple times throughout the series. The one guy that I think has really failed to show up in this series for Boston has been Jaylen Brown. It's not even close. Jaylen, behind the 3-point line, has been ice cold in this series. And just overall, he has not been able to get into a rhythm and has put Boston behind the 8 ball offensively. And then, you kick it back to Miami. Jimmy Butler's having a pretty solid series, but to me, this is just more of a team effort from Miami. And it kind of goes back to the idea that I've looked at with Golden State. Golden State's motto in the playoffs when they were going to finals and back-to-back years was strength in numbers. And honestly, you could apply that same phrase to what Miami is doing right now because, Kev, just to kind of go over the game 3 stats a little bit, Duncan Robinson had 22 points. Caleb Martin had 18 points. Max Strus had 10 points. Gabe Vincent led the team with 29 points. And then Jimmy had 16. This is just a group effort where guys are getting their opportunity to shine. They're making the most of it, and they're flourishing at a high level. So to me, this series is over. Even if Boston wins game 4, hypothetically, I think that Miami can walk into Boston for game 5 and still win that game. So to me, Miami has a complete stranglehold on this series. I think there's a very high chance that they wrap this up in 4 games. I've never seen an ace seed be this dominant in the NBA my entire life. There have been times where an ace seed has won a series against a number 1 seed. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. But this is the first time I can legitimately look at an 8 seed with the 2022-2023 Miami Heat and say that this is the best 8 seed that I've ever seen. And they actually have a chance to win the NBA Finals. If that were to happen, it's the greatest Cinderella story that I've ever seen in NBA history. Granted, there have been probably some Cinderella teams that you can look in the past that have maybe had similar type of success, but never as an 8 seed. This would be unprecedented in NBA history if Miami were to not only win this series, but win the NBA Finals. And Kev, it's like we talked about a couple weeks ago. Miami barely made it in to the playoffs as is. They were going toe-to-toe with the Chicago Bulls just to be able to get into the playoffs as the 8th seed in that second play-in tournament game. And they have just completely... They got the momentum from the Milwaukee series, and they have never looked back. And granted, whoever comes out of the West, more than likely it's going to be the Nuggets, because I don't see the Lakers coming back from a 3-0 deficit. It's going to be Miami versus Denver, more than likely. And I think that with the way Miami's playing, they got a real good chance of giving themselves a shot to win the NBA Finals. So this is more like a coronation for Miami at this point. I'm not really giving Boston any sort of chance to win. Boston has to slow down their 3-point shooters with Miami. If they don't do that, they're going to lose this game. Just because Miami's been lights out behind the 3-point line, and they've never made an adjustment to it. I'm not expecting that to change. The only way that Boston were to win a game 4 is if that were to happen, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and their role players step up, which has not happened really at all in this series. They might get good performances here and there from Jason Tatum and Malcolm Brogdon, but Jaylen Brown has really been a no-show in this series. And, you could say the same with Marcus Smart to a certain extent, where gets into foul trouble, gets a couple tees, doesn't really help the team move in a positive fashion. Unless all that were to completely reverse itself and Boston finds itself knocking down 3-point shots, playing good defense on the other side, there's no way that Boston's going to win this game. So to me, I got Miami all day in this, and I got them advancing to the finals.
It's kind of insane when you think about it, right? Like, Dwayne Wade, when he retired, left the keys to the kingdom pretty much available on the table because Jimmy Butler was in Philadelphia at the time. And you have to look at this like, there's this famous picture that's like circulating where Jimmy and Dwayne are sitting on the bench the last time the two of them faced off in the regular season. And it's like, then the GIF or the meme came up where like underneath the picture of Jimmy and Dwayne on the bench, it's Mufasa and Simba from The Lion King, essentially saying Dwayne is passing the keys to the kingdom to Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. 2 times, if they were to close this out in 4, or if they advance to the finals regardless, which Kyle and I both believe that they will, this would be the second time in 4 years they go to the finals. The Heat have not been to the finals since Dwayne Wade was there with LeBron James in 2014. Jimmy has now done this twice. Mm-hmm. People need to put respect on Jimmy Butler's name. I will not go further into detail, as I already have. Playoff Jimmy has been displayed throughout the entire postseason. If Miami, I will end this segment with this. If Miami caps this off with an NBA championship, Jimmy Butler will go down as one of the greatest NBA playoff performers in history. Mm-hmm. Not only an 8th seed, not only a guy that was said to be a step down from Dwayne Wade when he handed the keys over. Not only were the Miami Heat not favored in any series, but with injuries and a random roster and a decaying group of veterans, to make the finals in and of itself is an accomplishment. But to win, this will be probably one of the greatest postseason runs we have ever seen. aside from the 2011 Dallas Mavericks. And I would probably go as far as to say it may even be greater as a Mavericks fan because we were not an eighth seed. So, for those of you that have questions, doubts, I think those have been brushed away. The Heat have done everything they've needed to do to prove themselves and have earned a spot at the table for an NBA championship. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it is like you said, they haven't really been favored in any series leading up to this point. And more than likely, if they were to face the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals, they're probably not going to be favored in that one either.
Nope.
But I think they use that as fuel. I think they use that as bulletin board material. And it's kind of like an us against the world type of mentality. It's kind of very.
That's one you got to have.
It's something similar to what, I mean, I'm rocking the shirt. It's something that Bill Belichick used to do when the Patriots were going to multiple Super Bowls. He would kind of use that same principle. And a lot of times it's effective where, you get this us versus the world mentality. Nobody thinks that we're going to be able to do it, but you go out there and prove them wrong. You prove the doubters wrong. And I think that Miami has taken full advantage of that. I think when it comes to Jimmy Butler, he's the perfect guy to lead that charge. And then when you have a coach like Erik Spoelstra leading the way, it's all but possible to make that happen. And I honestly think that the one person that probably is not getting enough shine here in this whole equation when it comes to Miami is Erik Spoelstra. Erik Spoelstra is looking like the best coach in the NBA right now, because I don't know if any other coach could be able to rally a team like this to a point where you could barely make it into the playoffs as an 8 seed, where nobody is expecting you to even get past the first round against one of the best teams in the NBA with Milwaukee. Not only do you get past them, you get past the second round. And now you're one game away from potentially going to the NBA Finals in a 4-game sweep. I think there's going to be a discussion this offseason about just how good Erik Spoelstra is as a head coach. And to me, he's got to be in that number 1 or number 2 position, because I just don't really see how any other coach could be able to lead a group of men like this into the position that they're at and honestly make it look not flawless, but make it look easy, because nobody was expecting Miami to potentially sweep Boston in a 4-game sweep. I picked the Celtics in 6.
I picked Miami in 7.
But even you, I think, would probably look at the situation or the hypothetical of, well, let me ask you, just hypothetical question. If Miami were to sweep the Celtics, mind you, this is before the series took place, how would you have looked at that question?
No shot. I would have been like, this is going to be competitive. Boston is going to give them a run for their money. Jason Tatum's coming off 51. Like, there's a number of outliers, a number of reasons why I would have countered that with so many points. And that's why sports are beautiful, man. You can make predictions with statistics. You can make them with gut feelings. Unless you are in the locker room, unless you are on the court with these athletes, on the field, whatever realm it is. Yeah, whatever realm it is, you can't do it. And that's the nature of this job, this business of what Kyle and I are trying to get into. We kind of just are looking from the outside in, but we're trying to look at it within whatever details that we're given through, like I said, statistics and other factors. So the Miami Heat are on a historical run that needs to be respected. And, I think that they need to be given a lot more credit and kudos, even if by some miracle Boston were to make this competitive and force this to game 6, even game 7, which has never been done before. The Miami Heat have done something that people have not expected. I know if they were to make it to the finals, they'd be the second 8 seed to make the finals outside of the 99 Knicks. But like I said, how they've done it against who they've beaten, I would have never, if you would have given me a playoff sheet to make almost like an NCAA bracket, there was no shot I had Miami getting past the first round, let alone the way that they've dominated Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's really all I have to say on Miami. Kudos to them. Kudos to Jimmy Butler. Kudos to Erik Spoelstra and the organization, Pat Riley and the team that he has assimilated down there in South Beach with the 7 undrafted players. That goes to show that they've had a lot of faith in their system to develop, as well as their scouting team and their assistant coaches to develop that talent. So, I mean, again, Miami has done something we haven't seen in damn near 2 decades. So congratulations to them.
There was something that my brother and I were talking about last night. If there was a potential of both of these series being sweeps in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. It'd be the first time that something like that has happened since the 50s. So it'd be almost 80 years since we've seen something
Nuts.
like that. And Kev, it's a good little segue. You want to give a little update to the Lakers Nuggets game right now?
I am going to open that screen as we
You're gonna
speak.
you're gonna be shocked what you see.
Oh, Denver. Oh, oh. D- wow, Denver
Did us dirty in the third, bro.
36-16 in the third quarter. Holy shit.
I
Jokic has another triple double. Jokic, I think, breaks the all-time triple double number for a player in the
First,
postseason. Holy shit!
you know who's got 18 off the bench? Not off the bench, but the role players.
Aaron Gordon's got 19.
Oh, 19.
Porter's got 15. 13 for Caldwell Pope. That's crazy. Braun's got 37.
Yeah, he made a layup right at the end of the third quarter.
Wow.
Dude.
Okay, well, Kyle called it. Kyle said it while we were on the phone before we started recording. This looks good, but LA has been known to choke leads later in the second half and the fourth quarter. So before we get into that, we need to talk about a specific player that has retired. Kyle, I don't want to get into the Lakers just yet because it's not over yet.
I know. I wanted to bring the update up. That's all I was bringing it up for.
No, and that's totally okay. I didn't expect that. My reaction was 100% authentic.
That was the point. That was the point.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's as authentic as you can get if you would have saw my face. But again, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh's co-draftee has retired from the NBA after 19 seasons. Unfortunately, we did not get a farewell tour. Carmelo did not sign with a team in his final season. It's neither here nor there. We're not going to look at the negatives. We are going to look over the career that was Carmelo Anthony. We know him from his days in Denver, from the time he was in New York, even the time that he spent in Portland because of, the revitalization of his career after he had gone a year or two from not being signed after he was let go from the Atlanta Hawks and Houston, and that whole debacle with OKC and how that trio of Paul George and Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony failed. So Kyle, as a Laker fan who faced off against Carmelo Anthony a number of times in the postseason, especially that memorable 2009 series where Melo and Kobe were going at it in 6 games, what are your thoughts on Carmelo Anthony and his incredible career?
Oh, Carmelo was phenomenal in his NBA career. It's just unfortunate that the one thing that's going to be attached to his career is that he never won an NBA championship. When it comes to Carmelo, just individually as a player, though, Kev, it goes without saying that he was one of the most electrifying players when we were growing up, especially when he was in Denver, when he had his tenure with the Knicks. Kev, he was lights out behind the three-point line, and he wasn't afraid to take those big-time shots in those big-time moments and knock down critical shots for whatever team he was playing for. He's one of the most prolific scorers in the 2000s and the early 2010s. And when it comes to Carmelo, I think there's this idea, especially with kids that are growing up nowadays and thinking that he's a scrub, that he's a shell of his former self. And that's really all the memory that they have of Carmelo. And maybe this is a time where people like Kevin and I should definitely, influence them a little bit in saying it's like, that wasn't Carmelo. You got Carmelo at the tail end of his career where he just wasn't the same player. He just wasn't as effective as he was when he was in his prime. Because when he was in his prime, Kev, he was legitimately one of the best players in the NBA. You could make a really tough case that he was maybe the best player in the NBA, but I don't think anybody was really making that argument. It was really either Kobe or LeBron during his time when he was in his prime, but he was probably third or fourth in that discussion, just based on his shooting ability and his ability to knock down shots at the rim, from the mid-range, and behind the three-point line. And you look at Carmelo's whole career, it was extremely effective because they don't put scrubs in the top 75 all-time NBA list when the NBA was celebrating its 75th anniversary a couple years ago, or I believe it was last year. So Carmelo's career was extremely successful. He's going to go down as a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about that, simply just because of the impact that he brought to the NBA as a whole throughout his time. It's just, it's unfortunate that, like I said, he was never able to get that one NBA championship next to his name. To me, that would have capped off one hell of a career with Carmelo. But even despite that, still, it was an amazing career from Carmelo Anthony. Outside of the NBA, he won 3 gold medals with Team USA, 2008, 2012, 2016. So even though he wasn't able to get that NBA championship hardware, he was able to get 3 gold medals next to his name and alongside his teammates with Team USA in those 3 Olympic runs where they were extremely successful for the United States. To me, I will always look back on Carmelo Anthony's career with a certain amount of fondness, just because I think when it came to just the rivalry that they had between himself and Kobe, especially when they were going back at it, I'd say the late 2000s, like that 2008, 2009, 2010 stretch. That's where I think Kobe and Carmelo really made it interesting in those Western Conference playoffs matchups. And then, as far as I see it, he's probably one of the most beloved players in franchise history for the Knicks, even though that it didn't end in a championship. I imagine that a lot of Knicks fans have an extreme amount of fondness for the amount of excitement that he brought to the New York area during his time there. It's just, just to wrap this up, to me, Carmelo Anthony is going to go down as a Hall of Famer. Granted, I know he doesn't have the championship hardware to go along with that, but to me, the guy who played in the NBA for almost 20 years was one of the most exciting figures within the NBA during his time. And honestly, it was a great career, no matter how you look at it. And I think that's how I will always look at Carmelo Anthony's career when it's all said and done.
Carmelo obviously is one of the most prolific scorers that this league has seen. I believe he's retiring 9th, if not 10th, on the all-time NBA scoring list. Carmelo Anthony is known for somebody that is going to give you 110% every time down the floor. Maybe not known for his defensive presence, maybe not necessarily known for being a leader in the locker room, but when it comes to offensively, what he was able to put out, whether from the mid-range, whether it was down low, whether it was screaming, get the fuck out of here on a rebound, Carmelo Anthony is renowned as probably one of the best players of this generation. Growing up, seeing him go toe-to-toe in the Western Conference with the likes of Kobe Bryant, Dirk Nowitzki, and a list of other Hall of Fame players was unlike any other. And like I had mentioned in my lead-up, the 2009 Western Conference Finals was prime Carmelo Anthony going at it with Kobe Bryant, to which obviously the Nuggets fell, to Kobe eventually going out and getting his 4th NBA championship. It was unlike anything else. I mean, Kobe talked about it, obviously, rest in peace, before he had passed away. Carmelo Anthony has talked about it a number of times in his career, to where him and Kobe were very physical. Obviously, they were really good friends, but when it came to being on the court together at the same time, competing for a championship, it was something to be witnessed. I mean, those two were just level 1 competitors, absolutely giving it 130% at any time they had against one another. The matchups were great. The scoring outputs were great. The back and forth was incredible. The series as a whole was great. Then you go into Carmelo Anthony going to the New York Knicks, eventually being known as his homecoming. It was amazing. I mean, I'll always remember the one of the first games Carmelo was a Knick, and coming down the floor and hitting a couple shots against the Chicago Bulls to force a big win. The shot over Luol Deng and a number of other big plays that the Knicks had made while he was there. I mean, Melo scored 61 points on all jump shots in the Garden. Carmelo Anthony led the Knicks to a second-round playoff berth for the first time in God knows how many years, with the likes of an old Jason Kidd, Steve Novak, J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert. I mean, the list of players of just randomness kind of goes on. But Carmelo was known as a competitor. How his career ended was unfortunate. Obviously, signing with Oklahoma City, then obviously ended up getting traded to Atlanta, then getting picked up by Houston, and then, of course, not being in the league for a few years, then coming back to Portland, revitalizing his career, then going to the Lakers, and then being out of the league again. I believe that he was given an unfair closeout to his career. I mean, if Paul Pierce got a closeout in the Clippers, or should I say in Los Angeles as a Clipper, I believe that Carmelo Anthony deserved a lot better. But again, that's neither here nor there. From an overall standpoint, Carmelo Anthony will always go down as one of the best players of Kyle and I's generation growing up in the 2000s, in the late 90s. Obviously, Kyle and I were born in 94, 95 respectively, but we grew up and actually started paying attention in the 2000s where we actually knew how the sport worked. So, like kudos to Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, like one of the best players that we've seen in a long time, one of the best offensive prolific scorers that we've seen in our generation. And, like he will be severely missed. I will put it out there. I would not be surprised if he were to come out for a year out of retirement next season, the season after, just because he has a lot left in the tank. He's consistently working with his son, Kiyan Anthony, and it really does look like he still has a lot. Obviously, when he was a Laker, he averaged 12, 13 points a game, so it's not really a surprise for him to come off the bench again for a competitive team. We will see. If he hangs it up permanently, I wouldn't be surprised either, but I'm just saying, knowing Carmelo, him not getting the Farewell Tour, him not getting a chance to go out on his own terms, I would not be surprised if he did. But if he does decide to hang it up, tip of the cap, again, as a native New Yorker, what he was able to do for New York City, what he was able to do for the Knicks, it was incredible. And he will be a Hall of Famer without a doubt, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when it comes to Carmelo, just as a competitor, especially being a Lakers fan, you always hated going up against Carmelo when he was a member of the Nuggets, just because you knew that he was capable of dropping 30, 40 points on your head. And that was despite having Kobe Bryant on your team. It's just, that's how good Carmelo was. And, like I said at the top, it's just, to me, just the stretch that he had from the beginning of his career, basically throughout his Knicks tenure. That's what I will always remember about Carmelo, because it just, after that stretch with New York, he was just kicked around the league. And
sadly,
that was something that I think could be looked at as a little bit of disrespect. And I think that Carmelo definitely felt disrespected towards the end of his career. Now, you could say, well, he's not the same. He has to adjust to a different role, knowing that there's a bunch of younger players that these teams have to develop, and Carmelo's essentially going to be a player that could come off the bench. And I think that Carmelo wasn't going to settle for that, knowing that he was still capable of putting up 25, 30 points consistently as a starter. It's just one of those things where I think that end of his career may give people a different impression of what Carmelo Anthony was throughout his career. And I just don't think that was the case. To me, I'm not going to judge Carmelo Anthony off of the last 2 to 3, 4 years of his NBA career. I'm going to judge what he did throughout pretty much his upbringing in the NBA, the early years in Denver, and the stretch that he had with New York, because it goes without saying that he was extremely effective. He was lights out with Denver and New York, and was honestly one of the most exciting players to watch in the NBA alongside Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. It's not easy to be able to compete against guys that you could technically have on a Mount Rushmore, arguably speaking. Carmelo found himself in that third fiddle in guys of that company with LeBron and Kobe, but he was always going toe to toe with them. He could drop 50 points on you. I think, does he have the Garden record
for most points scored? I think
most
so.
Point,
with
I think
61.
He had 61 or 62.
Yeah, one of those two.
So, to me, just a prolific scorer, and to me, he's definitely going to go down as a Hall of Fame player. He made the top 75 list when the NBA was celebrating its 75th anniversary. No doubt you're going to the NBA Hall of Fame. And it's just a little bittersweet knowing that he just didn't get that one championship. Definitely had the skill, definitely had the drive to be able to get that. Just unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in that regard. But nonetheless, it was a successful career as far as I see it. And like you said, Kev, tip to the cap on Carmelo Anthony for an outstanding career in the NBA. Not a lot of guys like that come around the NBA, so
not at all. Our generation is coming to an end, man. I think Bron is truly and honestly one of the last ones left who really emulate what it was like to play in that era. So again, big shout out to Melo, and we'll kind of move on from there.
I think Braun's the
Uh,
only player left from that '03 draft
from that draft, yeah, but from that like that overall like early
era.
2000s
That era.
generation, yeah,
Yeah.
that's coming
Yeah.
to a close relatively quickly.
It was a good era.
So
It was a good
it,
era.
probably arguably one of the best, but we have to talk about the new generation. So Kyle has some thoughts on John Morant's looming suspension that has not come down from the NBA. We talked about it last week. I've said my piece. I've had some backlash for it. I don't regret what I said overall. I mean, John Morant has made two big career mistakes in the last few months of his NBA career. So Kyle has some thoughts as to what's going on and why he believes that the NBA is kind of dragging their feet on the ruling of his suspension with the NBA Finals looming in the next few days. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts with this whole John Morant situation?
Well, to me, this whole situation arose when he had his second gun flashing incident last week. And really the only update that the NBA has made in regards to this situation involving John Morant is that Adam Silver was on ESPN and he was talking about what sort of suspension is going to come towards John Morant's way because of this situation. And, he's expecting the worst case scenario in this predicament. Now, to me, when it comes to how the NBA has handled this situation in regards to John Morant, they're dragging their feet on purpose as far as I see it, because the situation took place last week. Everybody who watched the video knew that he was flexing a gun on Instagram Live when he had just done a similar type of thing 2 months prior. And when it came to the first time that the NBA was addressing this situation, to me, they did not go as far as I think that they should have when it came to a suspension the first time around. Now, when it comes to the second time around, Kevin and I already talked about this. We talked about, at a bare minimum, John Morant needs to be suspended at least half of the season because of this reoccurring situation. And mind you, just because of the two situations that John Morant's had on Instagram Live involving firearms, those are not the only situations that he's been involved in. There have been a multitude of other situations that have taken place where he's been involved with a firearm where it's not just him, but he's in the vicinity of one. And honestly, it just seems like in the last couple months, trouble has followed John Morant wherever he's been. Now, when it comes to this situation, like I said, bare minimum, I would expect he'd be suspended for half of the season. Kev has gone out and basically said that he should not only be suspended for this next upcoming season, but just face an outright ban, just outright get away from the NBA based on this situation at hand, because it's a bad look. Optically speaking, for the NBA, them dragging their feet with this is kind of ridiculous. And I think the only reason why they're doing it is because they don't want to face any sort of bad press or get any backlash with the NBA Finals approaching. And more than likely, they're going to slow roll this thing past the NBA Finals, and then they'll address it once the finals are over with. And I think, to me, they're just afraid of the consequences that are coming their way, because if there's some sort of potential blowback that they could get because they are perceived to be too harsh in suspending John Morant, apparently they don't want the PR associated with that. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at this situation. As far as I see it, when it comes to Ja, bare minimum, half of the season he should just be suspended for. More than likely, to me, what I would say is an acceptable punishment is that he should be suspended for the entire length of next year, just because of the amount of times that the situation has come up. And I think that the NBA needs to set a precedent when it comes to these types of situations, because, to me, if they come off too lenient with this situation involving John Morant, I'm going to look at the NBA brand completely differently, knowing that you're allowing players to just outright flex firearms in what I would consider is not the best look from a PR perspective. And at most, you may only give them 15, 20 game suspensions. I think that's far too lenient. And it really kind of goes to show that the NBA is really just in it for the money, or they're really just kind of in their own bubble. Because had this been anybody else where they had two situations in 2 months involving firearms where they're outright flexing them on Instagram Live, not only would they have lost their job, there would have been a potential charge that they would have had to follow up from the police, more than likely. So, to me, this situation should have already been handled. Them slow rolling this thing in regards to the NBA slow rolling this thing is a bad look in my mind. And depending on what sort of suspension that they hand down on Ja Morant, if they're too lenient on Ja with this situation, optically they may think that they're doing the right thing, but in my mind, this is one of those situations where you need to set a precedent. And I think it's been a while since the NBA has had to deal with a precedent like this. Like the last time where they had to deal with somebody of this magnitude, meaning somebody of superstar caliber within the NBA, was probably Gilbert Arenas. And I think this is one of those situations where it's a new generation, but they have to set a precedent. And I think Ja Morant should be that precedent setter. And I think there should be a severe suspension in regards to this. But to me, this is mostly about the NBA. You know, Ja Morant did what he did, and now he's going to face the consequences of what he did from the NBA. But to me, the NBA slow rolling this thing is outright unacceptable. And to me, it's a bad look optically. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts on it. Kyle and I share the same opinion. This definitely should have been clear cut and concise in terms of what I think. So we'll kind of move on from there to our next segment, which is, of course,
You got this one, Kev.
going to. You got it. Swing it over here.
Kev, this is like your favorite player of all time.
Shut up. You know what it is.
Trust me, I know what it is. I've been waiting for this one. So we get to talk about Kev's favorite player of all time, and that is one James Harden. James Harden is more than likely moving on from the Philadelphia 76ers this offseason after having an up and down second round playoff series with Philly against the Boston Celtics. Word around town is that James Harden is looking to play for a potential playoff contender this upcoming year. And he is looking for potentially landing upwards of a contract that could get him $200 million over the course of that contract. If you guys are watching, you could see the outright dismay of what that could potentially bring for James Harden's future. But nonetheless, I think there's definitely a market where James could take advantage of. And I think more than likely, he's going to get a pretty sizable contract this offseason. And obviously, time will tell. We don't know where he's going to land. I know there's been rumors circulating about him potentially returning to the Houston Rockets, even though they are the antithesis of a playoff contender. I would imagine the Houston clubs are probably lining up ready for James Harden if that possibility plays itself out over this upcoming summer. But nonetheless, the James Harden sweepstakes apparently are back on, and we'll see how things play out this offseason when it comes to which teams could potentially land him. So, Kev, to get this one to you, with the word being that James Harden could potentially land a $200 million contract this summer, just give me your overall thoughts of where James could go and the impact that this could have for the rest of his potential career.
Have teams lost their mind? Like, seriously, what actual contender in this league is ready to commit $200+ million to a 34-year-old player? He's not washed by any means. We saw what he can do in the postseason. We saw what he can do in the regular season in terms of 20+ points, led the league in assists. He definitely still has gas left in the tank. But you pay players for what they can do for you when it matters most. Yes, he had 2 40-point games in 7 games of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. But in the games in which he did not drop those points, he was damn near invisible. In Game 7, where it mattered the most, he had 11 shot attempts and only made 3 of them with 9 total points. In the final 2 games of that series, he had 10 or 11 turnovers by himself. What has he shown me to say you're worth $50 million a year? Because again, he wants 200+, right? That's going to be over a 4 to 5 year span. If it's within 4 years, it's going to be $50 million a year. Who in the hell is going to pay him that much money? LeBron James doesn't even make $50 million in a season. And he's in the Western Conference Finals at age 38 with damn near 40 points in an elimination game. I want you to tell me what James Harden brings to the table to deserve $50 million. He had flashes. He had spurts. That's not consistent basis anymore. That's not 2018, 2017 James Harden averaging 36 points a game. This is barely half of him. He has enough to go all in every other game. That's to say, and that's just to assume that he's going to play 82 games in a year, which we know he's not. He is one of the least most clutch players I've ever seen outside of that shot in game 4, if I'm not mistaken, to put Philly up, to tie the series 2-2 against the Celtics, to where he hit a shot in overtime over Jaylen Brown in the corner. He's consistently turning the ball over. He has way too many off games as opposed to his few on games. And overall, his body language just doesn't scream like he's somebody that wants to be somewhere. I mean, let's be honest. The guy asked Doc Rivers permission this postseason to go to the club in Vegas because the Celtics took 6 games to beat the Hawks because they swept Brooklyn. So he took it upon himself to say, you know what? I'm going to prioritize myself and my selfish needs, and I'm going to go to the club. To which he was caught by TMZ smacking somebody at the back door. So your team first, you want to be on a contender, you want to win, but your best chance to win that you've had arguably in your career in terms of supporting cast with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and the remainder of the Philadelphia 76ers, you wouldn't want to opt in to compete again. Philly can offer you the most money. You got Doc Rivers fired. You made it to the semifinals, which is the farthest you've made since the Western Conference Finals when Chris Paul got hurt against the Warriors. Now you want to go back to Houston, who is a lottery team with 2 ball-dominant guards at Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. and Ime Udoka. I'm genuinely stroking my beard and my mustache here, just trying to think about what dumbass organization would sign you. I don't understand. I mean, Dwight Howard's out here calling for people in Taiwan. You might want to go out there if you want that much money, because I don't know what NBA team in terms of contenders is going to give you. Because if Houston gives it to you to come back, by all means, have fun wasting the final years of your career. But if you really want to win, you opt into the $35.8 million contract that's remaining with Philadelphia. You run it back with the defending MVP. You're going to have a new head coach. Figure it out. But no, you forced your way out of Houston to go to Brooklyn. You forced your way out of Brooklyn to go to Philly. And now you are going to leave Philly, which is the best case situation for the remainder of your career, in my personal opinion, in terms of contending and competing, to go back to a struggling, rebuilding Houston Rockets team. By all means, James Harden, continue to waste your career. You're an absolute piece of shit, and you're just wasting time. So I will deal with your stupid step backs for the next remainder, 3-4 years of your career, for you to waste my time. Have fun in Houston. I bet the clubs are just popping bottles, just waiting for you to get back, because clearly that's your priority, because winning sure as hell isn't.
You go get that bag, though. And
Congratulations.
A team's going to be dumb enough to give it to him.
Have fun.
I mean, to me, when it comes to James Harden, I'm not as harsh as my partner here would really lay it out on the line, simply just because when I look at James Harden, to me, there's no doubt that he definitely deserves criticism for the up and down nature of what he provided the Philadelphia 76ers in that Eastern Conference semifinals against the Boston Celtics. It's just, to me, when I look at James is in a situation where maybe he's just going to perform better, where he doesn't have to share the rock with somebody who's of similar caliber as far as an NBA superstar is concerned, because it definitely seemed like Joel was definitely the primary force offensively for Philly, especially this year since he won the MVP. And I think when it comes to James, even in the one game, I think it was game 1 of that series against the Celtics, he dropped 40 points. He hit the 45. Go-ahead 3, the game-winning 3 on the road against Boston with Joel out in that first game. So to me, Joel could still be able to perform at a high level. I'm not gonna disregard his effectiveness in being able to knock down shots consistently. It's just, to me, are we gonna get that James Harden from Houston, where he could hit those step back threes, with relatively ease, more than likely that's not going to happen. But I still think that he could go out there and consistently get, I don't know, 25 points a game. I think that he could still be able to do that. Even though that he is older, he's not the same player what he was a couple years ago. I still think that he could provide a pretty good service for a potential playoff contender. I highly doubt that he's going to return to the Philadelphia 76ers. I just don't see that happening. I think that more than likely he's looking for, like Kev said, a contract that's going to pay him an exorbitant amount of money. And I think if he gets it for a 4 to 5 year deal, I think that he'll take it. If it goes with Houston, to me, that's where he's just going to finish out his career. I mean, at that point, when it comes to contending for a championship, that is not going to happen. At that point, he's pretty much just going to finish out his career, make the amount of money that he wants to before he ends up retiring. And I think he's perfectly fine with settling in that regard. To me, I think at the end of your career, especially with James being on the back half of his career at this point, I think that vying for a championship should be at the forefront. It should be the primary factor in what a player pursues at this point. Obviously, that doesn't seem to be the case with James Harden. But, hey, man, it's his life. If this is what he wants to do, this is the way that he wants to finish his career, he can have at it. I think, from a big picture perspective, I think it's relatively short-sighted. You're just back chasing then at that point. If it comes to pursuing a championship, if that's not really worth it to you, then by all means, you can go out in this regard. But I think when it comes to the respect that is potentially given to a player like James, don't get me wrong, James is a fantastic basketball player. But, if you're just bag chasing, there's a little bit left to be desired as far as I see it. So we'll see what happens with James. I think he's still going to get a massive contract this offseason. More than $200 million. Team actually does give that to him. Good luck. But I think at this point, if he were to get somewhere around, I'd say $35 to $40 million a year, I think a team would be more than willing to give that up. But if you're talking about giving him $50 million over the next 4 years, I think you'd be insane to do that. But knowing how desperate some teams are, they'll probably pull the trigger on that. So we'll see what happens with him this offseason. But I think it's more than likely over with him in Philly. Kev, you got your hands on your head here. What you looking at right now?
This man Jokic just did another fadeaway off of 1 foot, basically on the 3-point line, and made it with no time on the clock over Anthony Davis.
He made one of those shots earlier in the game too. It was absolutely insane.
LeBron's got 40. Guys, again, you guys will have already known the final to this, but at the point that we're recording, there are 2 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock. Denver's up 110 to 107. And this is just absolutely ludicrous as to how back and forth this is going. LeBron James is digging in his bag, trying to will the Lakers to survive and force a game 5. And Nikola Jokic is out here making circus fucking shots. Because it's a game. It's a game to him. He is playing in his backyard with his horses, his donkeys, his cow, whatever it is that he does in Serbia is what he is doing right now on an NBA court. There's no answer for him. There just isn't. And then Austin Reeves goes and hits a shot at a 3. Guys, this game's, if you're not watching it, it's insane. If you didn't watch it by the time we finish this, I don't know what you're doing. It's Monday, ain't nothing to do on a Monday night. But guys, this is nuts. This is just absolutely an incredible game. And this is the last segment on the line right now. So we really don't have much else to talk about other than the series as a whole.
Honestly, Kev, I just kind of want to dedicate like the last portion of the episode to just seeing how the last couple of minutes playing out, because there's not that much time left. There's only 2 minutes.
2 minutes flat.
Yeah. So my stream that I'm watching on my phone is a little bit behind yours. So as of right now, I'm just seeing Aaron Gordon going up to the free throw line. I don't know if he made any of them, but
they just showed me the replay of Jokic hitting that shot again.
That was the second shot that he hit in this game where it was very similar, where it was just a circus type shot. Even LeBron, I don't know if you caught it earlier, where LeBron was throwing up an alley-oop pass to Rui Hachimura, and he straight out splashed it behind the 3-point
Yeah,
line.
saw that in the first quarter. Yeah.
So that's what got LeBron cooking in the first quarter. Once he knocked down that shot, it's like the rest of them are going to go in if he can actually spot up and get in proper form. Bro,
Yeah,
just,
I mean,
bro,
guys,
dude,
just to kind of like preview some of the game, Nicholas got another triple double. He's got 8 triple doubles in this postseason run, surpassing Wilt Chamberlain, who had 7 triple doubles in a postseason run. So Jokic is now in elite company once again with something else. LeBron James has scored 40 points, has 8 rebounds and 9 assists. Again, he is flirting with a triple double in an elimination game. And it's just, again, the supporting cast of the Denver Nuggets is just playing lights out. I mean, just to give you the
yeah.
box score as to what we have at this very moment in time, we're talking 22, 15, 28, 25, and 13 just for the starters of the Nuggets. They've only played 2 people off the bench, to where Jeff Green has 2 and Bruce Brown has 6. This is truly and honestly the definition of being carried by your starting 5. And Mike Malone obviously wants to end this game right here and now.
You know what's crazy, bro? Is Reggie Jackson's on this team.
Reggie Jackson don't get no burn. I don't understand why he got bought out by the Clippers and still doesn't play.
I know, and he can hoop.
Yeah, we saw him hoop for LA. This seems like it's going to be a lot of free throws back and forth, because on my stream right now, Anthony Davis just got fouled. So we may not be able to stall this for very long. So, I mean, I'm just thinking from an overall, like, rather than drag the episode out as a whole, let's talk about the series.
Mhm.
Kyle, I'm only going to just send this your way because, again, you're the Laker fan.
We'll keep the split screen for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in general, what are your thoughts on LA going down 3-0? I mean, each and every game, it just looks like LA cannot hold a lead together or just falls apart in the fourth quarter, to where Nikola, Jamal Murray, somebody takes over and you guys can't come back.
Yeah, and to me, it's very simple. The Lakers have been competitive in these games, and I know that Denver's up 3-0 with the potential of sweeping this series in 4, but the Lakers have been in every single game. It's just that, to me, the biggest difference is that the Nuggets, they just look fresher as a team going into the fourth quarter, and they are just knocking down their shots at a high rate. I mean, you could look at some of these games in particular. Game 2, back and forth game. I think the Lakers even took the lead in the fourth quarter in that game 2 in Denver. And then Jamal Murray goes on this huge run in the fourth quarter where he's knocking down multiple 3-point shots, really puts the Lakers in a bind, and the Lakers just couldn't respond effectively. You could look to game 3, first game in LA. Jamal pops off for 30 points in the first half, yet the Lakers are still going toe-to-toe with him. The Lakers were up in the fourth quarter in game 3. And then Denver just goes on a huge run to close out the fourth quarter where Jokic was on fire. Jamal was still knocking down shots. He wasn't as hot in the second half compared to what he was in the first half, but nonetheless, he was still effective at times. And then it's guys like KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, hitting shots behind the 3-point line. Jokic could even go out there and hit the occasional 3-point shot, just because if he gets the open look for it, he'll take the shot. And then you could look at maybe guys like Michael Porter Jr. or Bruce Brown. Michael Porter Jr. has hit some pretty timely shots, especially behind the 3-point line. And, you know, Kev, that was one of the things that we were talking about going into the series, was how effective would someone like Michael Porter Jr. be, knowing that he's had an inconsistent playoff run at this point for Denver. I think that he's been pretty effective. Granted, he's not going out there scoring 30 points, but he's still knocking down a high number of his shots. And when it comes to the Lakers have gotten good contributions from their role players. Austin Reeves, Roy Hachimura, they have played extremely well. It's just the one absent player throughout this entire playoff run, specifically in this series against Denver, was D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell has been extremely cold. He can't get into a rhythm. He's been ice cold behind the 3-point line. And it's a complete reversal of what we've seen from him in the first 2 series, where the Lakers won those series and got to this point. And then on top of that, I think the Lakers, they haven't gotten the best performances from LeBron James. You know, granted, in this game 4 performance, he's been fine. He's been playing extremely well. He's over 40 points at this point. But there have been times where he's looked a little bit more passive. It may be in consequence of primarily running the offense through Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis has had a pretty decent playoff series against Denver. But enough to be able to eclipse what Nikola Jokic is doing on the other end? Probably not. So, to me, overall, the Lakers have shown that they can run it with Denver. It's just that at the most opportune times, the Lakers have failed, the Nuggets have succeeded. And that's really been the difference maker in this series. And I think on top of that, I think the Lakers have made a slight mistake in putting so much attention on Jokic, where if they put too much attention on the help against Jokic, they're leaving guys like KCP, Michael Porter Jr., and Jamal Murray wide open for three-point shots. And Denver's knocking them down. Denver is a better three-point shooting team than LA. That's been the case the entire year. They have definitely taken the Lakers to task on that. And you look at the difference of, okay, if Denver's knocking down 16, 17 three-point shots in a game and LA's only making maybe 10 or 11, that's a 6 3-point shot difference in making three-point shots. That's an 18-point difference. It's going to get you. And honestly, depending on how this game 4 finishes out, there's only a couple. I mean, we're at the tail end of the game. You look back on some of these key stats and you could definitely see the difference of where the Nuggets are making a bigger impact than the Lakers. And, Lakers get swept in 4 games. It just really goes to show how good Denver is. Denver's definitely worthy of being that number 1 seed. And, I think they have a very good chance to make a good case to potentially not only do really well in the finals, but win the finals. And honestly,
I just find it funny. I mean, there's 31 seconds left. LA just called timeout with 3 seconds left to inbound the ball. I just find it comical in this series how every narrative from every sports media broadcast unit like ESPN, like Bleacher Report, instead of praising the Nuggets, when was the last time the Nuggets have been in a situation like this? Like how effective Nikola Jokic has been, the supporting cast of Jamal Murray and everybody else. It's been focalized around, can the Lakers come back from an 0-3 deficit? Can LeBron James break history again and be the first person to come back from an 0-3 deficit? Can the LA Lakers find a way to scrummage back and at least make this competitive? There have been no headlines in favor, in both conferences, of the Heat and the Nuggets. It's all around the Lakers and the Celtics, LeBron James and Jason Tatum, and what each team can do to improve for the next game, as opposed to giving the proper shine to the teams that deserve it. LA is losing this series, whether it's been close or not. The bottom line, it is 3-0 in favor of the Nuggets. It's 3-0 in favor of the Heat, and neither team is getting the media attention that they deserve. Mm-hmm. So I just find it funny how there's always an agenda to push. I know we always joke about the script and how that was an ongoing joke throughout the regular season, but sometimes it's like some of those things just seem authentic, because it's like, how are you not talking about the team that's actually winning, but you're focused on the team that's down the 3 games? And that was a bad shot. 23 seconds to go. Denver's pushing the ball up. It's 113-111. 19 seconds to go. Denver's going to hold for the last shot. It is 14 seconds on the shot clock, 11 seconds on the actual game clock. Oh, no, I had that backwards.
I think it was 11 on the play clock, on the shot clock, and 14 on the game clock.
4 seconds to go. LA has the ball. Timeout LA. 113-111. LA will take the last shot with their season on the line. Ladies and gentlemen, it does not get more authentic than this.
That was a bad shot by LeBron.
Oh, 100%.
That was
a bad shot by Bron and a worse shot by Jamal Murray on the other side.
Well, I mean, okay, you got Lakers for the last shot. What are you going to run here?
I don't know, man. They're going to hone in on Bron. You got to find a way to kick it out to one of your role players like Lonnie Walker, maybe even Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves has made some clutch shots. I mean, you can even try to have a pin down, have Anthony Davis come up as LeBron James catches it, maybe even have a quick... I don't even know, man. Like, you have Nikola Jokic in the paint. You can't even run a curl. Like, it's just so tough.
I think at this point, you go for the win.
Do you? Your season on the line, you go for 3? You don't try to tie it and go to OT?
Because, I mean, look, if you could run a pick and roll with LeBron and LeBron drives
into... Not enough time with 4 seconds, man.
You could run it quick. 4 seconds is enough time, but it had to be super quick.
You're going to collapse on the ball handler, though. You're going to force a bad shot.
They'd have to get LeBron on a run, set the pick, and then he's just going to have to try to drive into the lane, and then...
I think they deny Bron. I'm a second ahead of you, so I'm not going to say a word, and I'm going to try to have no facial expression, so I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, because all I'm looking at
You're like
right
a
now,
millisecond behind me.
Well, right now I'm seeing a Wingstop commercial.
Yeah, you're selling a commercial. They're about to inbound for me. I will say nothing, guys. The only reason I have my phone in my hand is so that I can see.
Actually, I'm gonna shut off the tab that I have for the game. So you remember no facial expressions, right?
No facial expressions.
All right, they got 4 seconds left. So I mean, they got plenty of time to get a shot off. That's not going to be the issue here. Um, I think it's going to come down to who's going to have the rock to be able to get the last shot off. I think to me, if you get it to LeBron, get it to Austin Reeves, it's probably going to be your two best options. Oh, but Reeves is inbounding the ball. Never mind. And that's it. And the Nuggets advance.
The Nuggets swept the Los Angeles Lakers and advanced to the NBA Finals. LeBron James scores over 40 points, does everything he can to will this team to somewhat of a competition, and it falls short, man. Congratulations to Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Mike Malone, and the supporting cast of the Nuggets organization. They advanced to the finals. Kudos to them for sweeping the Lakers.
That was great.
What an incredible game.
That was crazy, though. That was the play. Get LeBron the ball and drive to the basket.
That was bad, man. They doubled him. Jamal Murray was there on the help defense. Aaron Gordon was there on the shot attempt. You can make the argument LeBron was fouled. It looked like Jamal had his hand on the ball the whole time, so maybe even call a jump ball. But with 4 seconds, you let them play. Looks clean to me. Hand on the ball the whole way. And the Nuggets go to the finals.
That's a tough shot, bro. Because Aaron Gordon was on his hip the entire time.
Yep.
That was good.
I cannot believe they got swept.
That was great defense by not only by Jamal but by Aaron. Aaron was on his hip that entire time. That's great defense by Aaron. And Jamal, that's great help defense. And then he got blocked on the shot too. That was great defense. That was great defense by Denver.
All right. Well, guys, You got the final. You got our analysis of the series. I mean, realistically, the Nuggets are going to the finals. It's a matter of who's coming out on the East on the Celtics and Heat side. So, Kyle, I don't have anything else. That was our live reaction. Obviously, mine was delayed, but it is what it is. I wanted to be like, that was a shot, but for your sake, I do what I can.
Yeah, I mean, really, just one final thought. When it comes to this Denver Nugget Los Angeles Lakers series, is Denver is just. This is their year to me. Denver has been that number one seed in the West. They've earned it. And I know Kevin and I were talking about just the media narratives that we were hearing behind this series. And a lot of it was geared towards the Lakers. Could LeBron be able to lead this team to an NBA Finals over the Denver Nuggets? But Denver had been the better team consistently throughout this playoff series. And I think a credible case can be made that Denver wasn't getting enough shine and respect for the effort that they were displaying game in and game out. I mean, Kev, even though that this was competitive, Kev, if you're looking at this from a casual fan perspective, it's a sweep. Like, don't get me wrong, like you could nitpick here and there about each individual game. Had the Lakers done this, had the Lakers done that, it'd be a different series. But it's like, at the end of the day, they got swept by the Denver Nuggets. And I think this is something that is going to be interesting this offseason because, LeBron's getting up there. He's going to be 38. It's going to be 39 next season. How many cracks is he going to get at this? Because, I mean, he's on the tail end of his career. Granted, he's still effective. He just dropped over 40 points in game 4. So he could still play at a high level. But to me, when it comes to Denver, Denver is legit. They definitely deserve this trip to the NBA Finals. Nobody could take that away from them. But I think that Denver has a really good case to be made that they were slighted, even though being up in this series 3-0.
3-0.
Going into game 4. And like I said, granted, I'm a Lakers fan. I will put my bias to the side here. I picked Denver to win this series. I didn't expect it to be a sweep, but man, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr.,
Aaron
KCP,
Gordon did his thing today.
Like all of these guys, bro, they are running a 7-man rotation, and they are getting it done. Dude, this is gonna be crazy. with Denver going to the finals, more than likely Miami's going to meet them. It's going to be potentially a great series between, hypothetically, Denver and Miami. We'll see what happens with Miami in game 4 on Tuesday night. But overall, dude, Denver deserves a lot of credit. And I know that they probably won't get that from the nationwide media, especially from the sports media. But to me, man, Jokic is going to be a problem in the finals, bro. He's been a problem for opposing teams the entire postseason run. And, man, Denver's got a really good shot to win the finals here. So, honestly, well done by Denver.
Absolutely.
They were able to make more plays, especially late in the fourth quarter in most of these games. And that was the difference maker. Because I will give the Lakers credit. The Lakers made it a competitive series, even though that they lost every single game. Each individual game was competitive. It's just that Denver showed that they had more in the tank late in those fourth quarters, got those shots, knocked down those shots, and the Lakers they couldn't respond as effectively. And that's the difference. So, overall, we'll see how things play out with Denver. But overall, congratulations on making the finals for Denver. It's well deserved.
Yes, sir. That's going to wrap it up for us today. We're going to play it by ear by the week because obviously now the Denver series is over. All that's left is Miami. If Miami ends up closing it out tomorrow night, which Kyle and I both expect us to, we may have some segments coming up. There's no reason to divulge an entire episode just on 2 wrapped up series. We just covered one of them. So again, we will play it by ear and see what happens. But overall, you guys will see us again later this week. I'm back from vacation. Kyle doesn't go on his for another, 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yep.
So plenty of content coming your way until then. But without further ado, guys, we appreciate it as always. All the support, social media platforms, YouTube, audio, whatever the case may be. We will see you guys again soon. Kyle, take us home, man.
Honestly, I've got nothing more to add. That's just a good way to wrap it up. So, like Kev said, definitely appreciate the support. We will be back later this week. More than likely, it'll just be a lead up to the finals. And then we'll just kind of play it by ear after that. But with that said, you guys, once again, thank you guys for tuning in. And we will see you guys later this week.